It's finally here. Another Pittsburgh Steelers regular season is finally here. Gone is the preseason. Gone is training camp. Gone is probably the summer weather here soon enough. And gone maybe even is the drama that always surrounds the Pittsburgh Steelers. But another regular season is finally here. And I'm here to tell you why the Steelers actually would be lucky to get through the first quarter of the regular season 500, and why that would almost be a win, 2-2 through those first 4 games. I am your host, Mike Asti, and I'm coming at you from up above Market Square here in downtown Pittsburgh at the Pittsburgh Sports Live Studios. This broadcast, as always, made possible thanks to these signs behind me, Beaver County Auto, and of course, SteelersNow.com. And I've done a little bit of a season preview not long ago. I did a division preview once the Browns got all that hype and Odell Beckham Jr. and Baker Mayfield in his second year and all the hype and the sexy picks. I'm saying they win the Super Bowl. I had to do a division preview because I'm just not buying any of that yet. I did a division preview. That's all through the channel there, the Mic Drop section in Pittsburgh Sports Live. I've touched on the backup quarterback position, which was the main position battle of training camp, which you could actually argue is a bit of a positive. That they had other pieces to fill in other position battles, of course. The number 2 wide receiver, Moncrief in Washington. I've made my pick there, feeling like Washington will get the first crack and will step up. But Moncrief will also have his supporters, as most of the fans seem to go in his direction. I went with Mason Rudolph over Dobbs. I've kind of been on the Rudolph camp all through the preseason, all through training camp, and it seems like that's where the Steelers are going to go. In fact, that is where the Steelers are going to go, barring something catastrophic. And it was made evident, Rudolph just outplaying Dobbs throughout training camp, throughout the 7-on-7, throughout the preseason, certainly being the best of the bunch in the preseason and deserving that backup honors. They have to change the offense less. He fits more of the NFL mold over more of a history of success at that position, more of an accurate passer. Doesn't have to rely just on his legs to bail himself out like Dobbs does, despite maybe more experience from last year. So we've covered it all. I can brush our shoulders off a little bit for the preseason coverage. We even got the interviews, and we've hit it. We've hit the news, the notes, the analysis. We've hit all the cuts, everything you can imagine. SteelersNow.com. And namely for Alan and I in particular, this is going to be our first year with this website in particular within the family, SteelersNow.com. I covered the Steelers a bit, did all the A.B. Bell drama here on the channel, but this will be the first year of SteelersNow.com, the actual website in full force throughout an entire regular season and postseason. We'll give you the game day coverage, so prepare for even more, and I'm also planning on bringing the Steelers live chats back after a little bit of vacation there throughout this regular season. But for the purpose of this broadcast here, I'm going to kind of retool the season preview a little bit, make it even more concise, and get it to you before kickoff of week 1 with that national TV spotlight, watching the Patriots hang another banner there, Sunday Night Football. Yet another championship, the 6th for Brady and Belichick, and the others with multitude of rings. And the Steelers have to watch that yet again, despite beating New England last year in the regular season, but of course missing the playoffs to make it a bit null and void. The year you finally get over New England, it doesn't really matter. And they win it all anyway, getting back to the Super Bowl, but this year winning it. So I'm going to go through the first quarter of the schedule and kind of leave it there. However long it takes us. I'm guessing this is going to be a little bit of a shorter one, but that's fine. I'm going to have a lot more after week 1, of course, recapping that game and previewing week 2, and we're going to be having a lot more come out, as it always does. Steelers are a little bit of that 24/7 news wire, so is the NFL these days. And so much so that first bit of news here, the major news before the NFL regular season actually starts, and this was I guess Labor Day, because it was after midnight, I believe, maybe a little bit before, so it might have been Labor Day Eve, but technically a holiday. Preseason's over, regular season not yet to start, not even yet in the regular season week officially, but the Steelers finally get it done, and there is a picture of him at the training camp. We got it covered on SteelersNow.com, so go there to the website to find the instant reaction. Joe Hayden signs a 2-year extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers, so The veteran will be back, and yes, he suffered an injury in camp, and yes, Steven Nelson was brought in the offseason, and yes, Lane's going to be there, the rookie that was drafted. Yes, there's a lot to rely on in that Steelers secondary, and a lot needs improved because as we go through this quarter of the season, as we go through the entire season, the Steelers defense, which let them down 2 years ago in the playoffs against the Jaguars, which even let them down last year despite all the drama going on, the offense, I believe, still will score points, even without AB and Bell, another year without Bell. This offense, somebody, whether it's Washington or Moncrief, I do believe will step up into the number 2 receiver position that will take off some of the load for Juju, who's now the number 1 with all the double coverage he would see if somebody doesn't step up. James Conner seems to be cut and ripped and ready to go, and I think 1,000 yards is probably going to happen. He went over my expectations a year ago, so I got to meet where he was at least last year, coming into this year, to be fair to the guy. Suffered an injury, fumbled a lot, but I believe all that taken care of. That was the emphasis this training camp. And Connor, again, looks in much better shape to stay healthy, although he hasn't been able to stay healthy his entire football life, so you never know until we see it for an entire year. But Benny Snell will fill in at times, even though I wouldn't expect tons from him. The tight end position is going to be a weakness. That's going to be a problem. Will Ben be able to be bailed out with Jesse James now gone to Detroit? But I think Ben will even be more efficient without AB there and having to force it into him, and that will help the overall team with less mistakes and more efficiency from Big Ben, even if it means less yards and touchdowns, etc. So, again, all that said, that guy, who's one of the leaders of the defensive unit, that guy is on the hook a little bit. And I don't mean that, yes, he's recovering from an injury. I'm not expecting him to be a Pro Bowler like he was with the Cleveland Browns necessarily. He wanted to finish his career, and he's such a good dude, honestly, that I'm proud and happy for him that that's seemingly going to happen because the injury he suffered, that maybe was up in the air, at least on the money he would get, but got a solid deal, 2-year extension, probably retire as a Steeler. It's what he wanted. What are you going to get? Big ups for Joe Hayden. But the defense, and it's going to, as we go here into week 1, the defense is going to be the issue. The defense is going to be, and the Steelers have that game against New England, of course, Sunday Night Football. Patriots unveil the championship banner yet again. Steelers try to get back on the winning track and go where they get a winning streak put together against New England after beating them last year, but have it mean something. A rare game between these two that's not at the end of the year, but at the beginning of the year, week 1 kickoff. But it's going to be all about the defense. It's going to be all about Joe Hayden and company, and even not Hayden in week 1, but in general, Joe Hayden coming back, I think, is a big deal in terms of him being a leader of that defense. Him also maybe having something left in the tank if he can stay healthy and to improve and help that secondary. But for week 1 in particular, no, they're not going to rely on Joe Hayden, of course. He's recovering from the injury. You know, he's going to be there in the fold, and you're going to expect contributions throughout the season, but not necessarily week 1. So you also can't look too much to a rookie. You can't look to Lane. You can't look to see how many touches he's going to get or how many plays he'll be there for. But this Steelers secondary is going to be a major deal, especially in week 1. That's where you got to look to engage them right away because Gronk's not there anymore. So Gronk, who used to be able to dominate the Pittsburgh Steelers, okay, Gronk could run up and down like a damn Terminator, it felt like, over the Steelers, especially a couple years ago, and especially when he was healthy. He's not there. He may at some point come back, and I know I said this in a prior show, and it very well could happen based on some comments he's made with the CBD oil, his little press conference saying, I might not be done yet. The Patriots fans could have their Roger Clemens in the owner's box moment, if any baseball fans remember that, where you're looking at week 9 in Foxborough, and all of a sudden Rob Gronkowski is double fisting 2 beers, and the Patriots broadcast just going nuts. There he is, it's Gronk, he's double fisting, he's in the press box, go crazy. It's him and Robert Kraft hugging it up and double fisting. And then he'll be back a couple weeks later, and he'll help them through the playoff run and maybe even be more impactful in the postseason and towards the end of the year because he's going to even be healthier and you keep him fresh, and he's certainly in shape. No matter how much he'll work out now retired, but he's certainly in shape, and he's such a physical beast. Maybe the most dominating tight end ever, if not one of the most dominating players ever at any position in the league. The Shaq-type player for the NFL, really how dominating he was. He's not there, though, now. So that does, again, bring you back to the secondary not having as difficult of a time because Gronk's not there. And they won't have to worry as much about what could be happening in terms of low yardage but high percentage passes for Brady in terms of little check down to the tight end or little curl outs to a tight end or getting it to Gronk for 6 yards and he carries you further. Those type of passes might not be there as often, or at least Gronk guaranteeing to move the chains for you. He won't have that security with Tom Brady without Gronk when healthy. Certainly a big help to them. But there's, Tom Brady. They don't have necessarily the best receiver core in the world. They haven't had that and really haven't had that since Randy Moss was there in that historic 2007 season when Brady set the touchdown passing record, Moss set the receiving record, Wes Welker was there. They went to the Super Bowl, they went undefeated in the regular season and lost to the Giants. We know the story. That's the best Patriots team of this run with Brady and Belichick. It just didn't win a ring. It's a damn shame Moss doesn't have one, really. But there has not been world beaters since Welker left, and Edelman's there, and I've done a past show on his Hall of Fame candidacy, so I don't want to get into it now. But he's been great in the playoffs. But he's not certainly a guy who takes the top off the defense. He gives you the short passes and can curl you through down the field, like Gronk. So he'll still do that. He'll still work the chains, the 5 to 10 yards, the small completions, work you down the field. He might end up with 100 yards receiving just off those small completions, and that will give the defense fits. That will involve linebackers. That might not even involve the secondary, depending on how much the Steelers read these plays. And they know the Patriots very, very well. So they're going to be ready for that Patriots offense that dink and dunk, kind of annoy you all the way down the field for 20 minutes and touchdowns. You do it 2 or 3 times, they end up winning the game. They're going to be ready. They know that's what the Patriots do, and it's won them championships. But there hasn't been somebody to take the top off the defense other than maybe Gronk since Randy Moss, you could argue. Well, until now with Josh Gordon. I mean, Josh Gordon now back. He was traded to New England last year, didn't really do anything for them at all due to, again, then being suspended. They won the championship without him anyway. He had 2 or 3 years of basically being a car salesman off the Browns, tons of drama. Him and Manziel never got to really play together, despite seemingly that being why they were drafted around the same time. It's a whole nother Browns era now, but they were just sick of him. But years ago, if you can remember, Josh Gordon used to be one of the best receivers in football. He had 2 or 3 years where he was an elite receiver. 1,000-plus yards were there. He was athletic. He was a speedster. He could run up down the field. He could do one-on-one against any corner and beat him. He could take the top off the defense. So that's a guy that's now going to be there. That's a guy that could give this secondary and defense fits. That's a guy that you wish you could have Joe Hayden at 100% for. That's a guy that Steven Nelson is going to have to really get it done and show why they brought him in as a free agent in the offseason. That's a guy who's going to be a bigger deal as long as Joe Hayden's not on the field for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And a major deal for the Steelers last year was they weren't able to flip the field. They weren't able to cause turnovers. They didn't win many of those one-on-one battles with receivers, but certainly didn't get interceptions, didn't pick off quarterbacks, didn't create turnovers with their defense. Can the secondary create turnovers? Can they get under Brady? Can they get a pass rush? Maybe the pass rush leading to help for the secondary to get those turnovers because they do have more to deal with now in terms of weapons for Brady, as much as that's crazy to say in a way for a Hall of Famer, the greatest of all time, and just winning a Super Bowl. But he is declining a little bit. You could even see it last year. You get to him more in the pocket. You rush him more. You blitz him more. That line is a bigger deal, and the outside linebackers, that is going to maybe cause him fits. He wasn't perfect last year in the regular season by any means. This is not the Super Bowl. This is the regular season Week 1 game. They've been known to lose these before. The Patriots have lost these games, namely to Kansas City, but they've lost these games to kick off a championship defense type of year after winning a Super Bowl. So it can happen, even though they're at home and usually beat the Steelers at home handily in recent years. But there's more weapons now, so I would certainly be concerned, but the secondary will have a major test here. And if the Steelers, Devin Bush in particular, replacing Sagier as the inside backer, of course, J.J. Watt, even Bud Dupree, who had a solid camp, he can give you more. I heard on the last broadcast, actually, of the preseason, where Charlie Batch gave a what if. Well, Bud Dupree and J.J. Watt combined, or T.J. Watt, combined for 20 sacks. Okay, we don't know how it's going to go, who's going to have what. I mean, certainly TJ's going to have more, I'd imagine. I doubt they're going to go 10-10. But I wouldn't be shocked if TJ, ups his game, gives you 12 to 14, and then Bud Dupree can pick up the rest of the slack, or maybe they could combine for that. Or realistically, combine for at least 15. Wouldn't be crazy. That would really help the overall defense. The pass rush being there against an older quarterback, even if it's the GOAT, will majorly help you and even help that secondary now with more weapons to deal with. Steelers offense, though, I think will be okay. They looked great in that third preseason game with Ben on that one series he had in which they did score. Again, can they establish a number 2, Washington or Moncrief, to add some help to Juju because he will face double coverage, especially early in the year, without AB there to help him. Can Connor stay healthy? Tomlin loves the feature back, but can Connor stay healthy? Will they spot in Samuels or Snell, and who will be that first guy there? And can the tight end position help move the chains? Obviously, it's about run blocking, but also move the chains like Jesse James did in terms of can they move the chains and can they pick up those short yardage first downs if need be? Is there anyone there to really do that? That's a major question mark, and we'll see how the season goes because I certainly believe they're going to have to probably go get someone to replace what they don't have now at tight end. Who can they get? What can happen? Won't be there for week 1, though. So we'll see against New England as the tight end possession seemingly could be an issue. I think they're going to score points, though. It is week 1. It is the Patriots. They are at home. I know they lost this game before, but they have more weapons now. The Steelers are still figuring out the kinks. I don't think in any way, as this will happen, though, the sky will be falling if they end up not winning this one because it is the defending Super Bowl champions. It is Brady Belichick. It is this rivalry. They did just beat him last year. They are at home. I mean, the Patriots are going to be favored, obviously. So I'm going to go New England there just because it's the Patriots. It's the rivalry. They beat him last year, but I'm going to go in New England here with more weapons. I think they will take the top off a couple times. That will help them move the chains. They have enough. The Steelers still figuring things out, even though I think that defense is mightily improved from where it was even a season ago. And I was doing a fantasy draft actually over the weekend, and I saw some projections on some other publications having the Steelers defense ranked in the top 5 as a prediction for this coming season. I don't know, but it wouldn't shock me. I mean, they did the right necessary things to fix that defense and shore it up in the right spots, especially the secondary and the pass rush. It's what you got to do, whether through the draft or free agency or whatever. So I think it's going to be better. I wouldn't gauge the year off week 1, but I have that as a loss. As we go down through it, though, and I had to go obviously longer of a preview for week 1 because that's the game we got in front of us. Steelers then rounding it out with Seattle. Now, this game puts you in week 1 in terms of kicking off the season at Heinz Field. So it's week 1 for Heinz Field. It gives the Steelers their first home game of the year after that game in New England, win or lose. This is going to be a major deal just because it's the first home game in Pittsburgh. Seattle's obviously not a team you see that often. The NFC West, that's going to be the games you're going to get this year in terms of the divisional matchup with the NFC, as they play the Niners, Rams, etc. And the Niners coming up after this. But Seattle's a team that's changed even from 2-3 days ago. Okay, Russell Wilson, for me, has been a very underrated quarterback. Maybe overrated in the beginning of his career, some could say, but very underrated overall in terms of Russell Wilson's 3,000-plus passing yards every single year, 20-plus passing TDs every single year, it seems. His TD to interception ratio is pretty damn good. Okay. He led his team to 2 Super Bowl appearances. He did win 1. Yes, he had Marshawn Lynch way back. Yes, he had the Legion of Boom way back with Richard Sherman and company. But Earl Thomas is even gone. The superstars around him have just been whittling and whittling away as the years go by. And no, they're not world beaters winning the NFC every year like they were back when they had that star-studded roster. Everybody on rookie deals. Sherman didn't get paid yet. Thomas wasn't flipping anybody off on the cart waiting for money. Neither was even Russell Wilson. And Marshawn Lynch was still there. He didn't want to talk to anybody because he didn't want to get fined, but he hadn't yet retired or went to Oakland and, had his swan song. So there was still more of the continuity under Pete Carroll, and they should have got 2 rings. They got 1, but regardless, that was the heyday. And yes, Seattle fans don't want to think that would be the heyday of Russell Wilson's entire career because he's still relatively young. That was a lot of winning then, but you don't want to have another 5-10 years of not getting back there. And who knows if they're going to win another Super Bowl, but I do think Seattle now, especially after adding Clowney, Travis Clowney, the trade from the Texans, especially after adding Clowney, okay, that helps. The Rams obviously just went to the Super Bowl. They just won the NFC with Todd Gurley and Jared Goff and Sean McVay. And they're looking to get back there to finally win that ring. They're certainly going to be the favorite going into the year in the NFC West. Garoppolo, who I'll get to in a second here, is also back with the Niners, but they're still probably a year away, and then the Cardinals seemingly are rebuilding. It'll be a two-horse race between the Seahawks and Rams, and the Rams will be the favorites. Aaron Donald may be the best overall player in football in terms of dominating his position. Jared Goff's doing it certainly well enough. I wouldn't say he's a top 5 quarterback in this league, but well enough that he can give you some fancy numbers. He can guide the ship, and he can get it done and lead them clearly through the conference. And Todd Gurley, one of the best backs in this league and an absolute stud, and even though he got hurt last year and C.J. Anderson led them through the playoffs, he's still one of the best in the league, and they have a lot of weapons around him. So Rams team's going to be the favorite. But I wouldn't be shocked if Seattle's right there with them. I wouldn't be shocked if those games, those head-to-head matchups between the Rams and Seahawks decide that division. I wouldn't be shocked if the Seahawks are back to kind of where they were maybe a couple years ago. And that's even with weapons being away from Russell Wilson in terms of offensive weapons. But he always gives you points. He always gives you yards and TDs. He's that leader of that offense. He's athletic, but he's certainly not Michael Vick or what RG3 was. He's not even Dobbs. But he can be elusive in the pocket, and that kind of makes him be able to run around and find the short route. He can always find the short route that can allow them to move the chains, okay? And there still is a 1,000-plus yard runner there. No longer Jimmy Graham, but they have guys that can move the chains, but it's like Ben. He's dealt with a lot of weapons continuously be there and then continuously leave there. Doug Baldwin, etc. But that defense, bringing in Clowney, I think is a major deal that without him, I maybe wouldn't be saying this and wouldn't say that matchup is as scary for Pittsburgh because he can add that pass rush. And that pass rush is what's going to maybe cause Ben Fitz and really help that defense for Seattle, which is still a good defense even without Sherman and Earl Thomas. However, it's going to make them better, obviously, with Clowney. Steelers, especially coming off New England, and I think going to be coming off a loss on the road, even though it's not indicative of the year again. It's the first home game. They're going to be excited. They had a great offseason, had a solid camp. They improved this team. I truly believe that, and I think that's going to be a win. So I got the Steelers beating Seattle. First home game there at Heinz. Back to the schedule. They're the Niners. I'm not going to spend too much time on these last two games because I don't think they're nearly the contenders that New England and Seattle are. But the 49ers, another NFC West team, they're going to at best be third in the division. Garoppolo is back but had 7 starts before last year with the injury. Didn't get to obviously play or show anything last year for what they really could be. It set the team a year back, but they expect a lot from him. They gave him a mega deal contract off of, 7 starts, some spotty starts with New England, some other, mop-up role. Yeah, he won some games. Yes, he was winning in those games during the end of a year, but and the beginning of a year with the Niners. But what does that really show you? Does he do enough to think he's going to beat the Steelers? Does he do enough to think he's going to really take that team to the promised land or even the playoffs? Not for me yet. I mean, 5, 7? I believe it was 7 starts, including some time with those couple starts in New England. Yes, he had a great end-of-the-year run with the Niners a couple years ago, but he's coming off an injury. The weapons really aren't there around him like what you want. Richard Sherman is there defensively. There's names there, but they're relatively young. Maybe a few years from now they could be good. I'm not writing them off forever, and they did kind of do the right things to rebuild the ship there in San Fran. But I don't buy Garoppolo yet, and there's not enough. I mean, he has the money, great, but there's not any reason for me to buy into him unless you just want to go Belichick, and then you want to read off of those 5 weeks and the fact that he won those games. That's great. He's coming off an injury. I need to see more. Steelers got that win as well, even though they're doing the travel thing again. And then closing out there in terms of the first quarter of the season against the Cincinnati Bengals, that's going to be at home. That's going to be another primetime game. So the Steelers will have 2 primetime games in their first 4. They're going to have 2 primetime games in their first 4. And obviously week 1 against New England on the road, Sunday Night Football against the defending champs. But then also Monday Night Football against Cincinnati Bengals. And seemingly every year these two teams face each other on Monday Night Football. It'll be a little different this year because there's not going to be Vontaze Burfict, and I won't have any comments about safety and Ben last year, if you remember from his radio show, talking about how Vontaze Burfict certainly it was too much, certainly should have been punished harsher, certainly was going over the line, trying to injure guys. AB had said that years ago. Now, Antonio Brown and Vontaze Burfict are teammates with the Raiders, so that's hunky-dory for the two of them. As I say that, probably rolling my eyes, but it'll be funny how they will coexist. I'm sure they're going to be fine now because they're on the same team. But in terms of the Steelers, they don't have to worry about Vontaze Burfict anymore. They can go in this game figuring that they're going to all leave healthy. At least no one will intend to try to injure anybody. That'll be nice. But that's a Bengals team that is injury-riddled and just not good. Okay, it is a new era of Bengal football post-Marvin Lewis, finally. 15 years did take them from nothing to contention during the Carson Palmer, Chad Ochocinco days, TJ Houshmandzadeh. Sure. Then once we got towards the Pac-Man Jones days, and I'm a WVU alum, but I got to keep it real, Vontaze Burfict, they should have won that playoff game a few years ago, okay? Personality-wise, just mentally sound for a winning team. It just never was there. Marvin Lewis lost track of that team. The dumb penalties, and they just never really were truly a contender again, even if they were in the playoffs. 0-7, couldn't get a playoff victory for those 15 years out of those 7 attempts. Finally gone. New era Bengal football, it finally had to happen at some point, and it does. And, it's sooner rather than later, is what they could have said, but it's happening now, finally. And it's not going to matter for this year, probably won't matter for next year. I mean, Andy Dalton's there. He'll give you some yards, but he's certainly been inconsistent. He needs help around him. He's one of those quarterbacks that can be good if you give him weapons and you give him an A.J. Green who already is hurt, so that's already a problem. They really have been trying to find a running game the last few years, but haven't truly been able to find that guy. They've been mixing in a few men, and it's never really worked out fully. They have a superstar stud tight end, but like A.J. Green, never can stay on the field 100%. And I put him on my fantasy team as a backup behind Ertz with Philly, but it's unlikely, and he'll stay the full year healthy. Same thing with A.J. Green. But for week 1, we'll see. Bengals already dealing with injuries and just flat out not that good. Monday Night Football, they always get prime time, but there won't be any Vontaze Burfict hit to talk about as a news story leading up or after the game. So Steelers, I would imagine, win that one in a mop-up role. That game there might give you some confidence leading into the second quarter of the season. That game there will end that first quarter on a winning note. That game there will make you say, okay, the Patriots in week 1 maybe wasn't a win, but that was a great team they were playing. That's Belichick, that's Brady, this is defending champs. Okay, they can rebound. Seattle, we're going to see through those first 4. They're good. Clowney helps them. Russell Wilson's underrated. That's a good team. They're going to be a contender, a playoff team. They're going to fight there with the Rams. The Niners are years away. They're not there yet. Garoppolo might be okay, but there's not enough around him either. They're not going to really do anything this year, maybe 500 at best. But I think you'll see through those first 4 games, and here's the schedule again, that the Steelers will probably be 2-2. Honestly, they'd probably be 2-2, and it wouldn't be crazy. It wouldn't be the end of the world based on what's coming up after. I don't play the Chargers and other teams. I think Baltimore coming up after this. They're not going to be easy games either. It's a bit of a tougher schedule than it was even last year going in off of what you could predict these teams to do, and that does kind of suck. This is a Steelers team that missed the playoffs last year, even though they should have been there and got upset to teams they shouldn't have lost to. And we know that can happen again. I mean, they can lose to have that Raiders loss or have that loss to the Browns prior to Baker that they opened up last season, or the tie, I'm sorry. The loss to the Ravens, the 16-point game, 16-point lead that was blown to the Chargers. Those things can happen. Denver last year. So nothing is guaranteed. But first quarter of the season, I wouldn't be shocked. Steelers 2-2. Get out of that 2-2. Wouldn't be that bad to get out of that 2-2. Win over the Bengals, win over the Niners, or win over Seattle, win over the Niners, and then loss to the Patriots. Wouldn't be the end of the world. I mean, as you heard me go through, I think they're going to go 3-1. I think 3-1 is very, very possible. Okay, that they beat the Niners, they beat the Bengals, and they beat Seattle, and they lose the Patriots. Then it can be they lose one and then go 3 in a row. That wouldn't shock me to get a little of that winning streak going into that second quarter of the season. But Seattle is pretty good, so if they go 2-2, it's not the end of the world. Okay, Steelers could go 2-2. They could even be lucky to go 2-2. It's not the easiest first quarter of the season, but there are winnable games there for sure. But also 2 teams that I think are going to be playoff teams in Seattle and New England that they will face. So that will be an interesting situation on whether they go 2-2. I don't think any worse than 2-2, I'll say that. But 3-1 is certainly possible, and 3-1 is probably where I think they're going to go. Want to make sure to let you know, once again, to keep it here to Pittsburgh Sports Live. Make sure to subscribe. There's the sign below me. Click on the subscribe button. Make it easier for us to get this content to you, whether it be for these shows, whether it be the Steelers shows, whether it be for any of my shows here on the Mic Drop channel in terms of anything I'm talking about, whether it be the Steelers or beyond. But also what we got going on through the entire family of networks. Pittsburgh Sports Now with the Pitt season, all other colleges, the Western PA high school season, Pittsburgh Soccer Now, Pittsburgh Hockey Now, still in the offseason, but leading towards the Penguins preseason. WV Sports Now, the Mountaineers in full season, but also some news going on with their basketball program. WVU coming off a win over JMU, but we'll see. It wasn't that impressive, but the Neil Brown era now is in full effect. I'm going to be doing some WVU shows to add on to the Mic Drop portion here in PSL as well. So WVSportsNow.com, and give them a little promotion since they're the newest ones. There it is, WVSportsNow.com. And, of course, PGHSportsLive.com, where you can find this show and all of our Pittsburgh Sports Live content there in website form for all eternity or until I take it off. Also find us on Facebook, Pittsburgh Sports Live on Facebook, and SteelersNow.com, of course, SteelersNow.com, where you can find, there it is, you can find previews like that. The Mic Drop show is on SteelersNow.com, as well as all of our game day coverage, our news, notes, analysis throughout the days, weeks, and months of this NFL season. You can find us on Twitter at PGH Sports Live on Twitter, as well as at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter. And, of course, can find me there at Asti11 on Twitter. So follow me, converse with me, interact with me. Just try to keep it intelligent if you can. It's all I ask for. I know it's kind of hard these days to just ask for that, but we'll see what happens there on the Twitterverse. And we got a whole season to go, but I'm going to take these quarter at a time as well, game to game, live chats, all that's coming there as we get through another Steelers season and the first here for SteelersNow.com.